Okay, now this is kind of weird. For the first time in channel history, I'm gonna be making a video talking about a guy whom I met a few days ago. Yeah, it's weird. No, we're not talking about Elliotte Friedman, we're talking about one of the players that is going to be discussed in today's video. So, just a quick aside, I think some of you might have been familiar with this, but others may not have been. I talked about this in the Kuzmenko-Bally video, but earlier in September, when you had yourselves the Troy Stecher Foundation NHL players practice go on at Minoru Arenas in Richmond, I actually attended two of the days and ended up meeting a bunch of these NHL athletes outside the arena afterwards. Of course, it was an awesome event, just being able to come out and watch NHLers practice, donate to Diabetes Canada, and support the cause. But seeing a lot of the guys outside and meeting them, having a quick conversation with Kyle Burrows, talking to Stecher. I had my picture taken with Brendan Gallagher and Tanner Pearson. It was kind of surreal just being there and seeing a lot of the athletes that we watch on TV, literal millionaires walking around and spending some time with us fans, obviously while practicing in the process, but it's weird now being able to say, yeah, we're going to talk about this player in the Canucks, and it's like, yeah, I was around that guy a little bit earlier last week. So either way, today we are talking about the Canucks, we're talking about Tanner Pearson, and we're going over Elliotte Friedman's update on the 32 Thoughts podcast as to how Pearson makes this trade situation with the team a little bit more interesting. So, our source is, as we had said, the recent edition of 32 Thoughts. The link is going to be in the description if you wanted to listen to the audio. It was from Friday, so September 8th. And from this audio hit, we had ourselves Friedman talking about a few things. We're going to pull Friedman's thoughts from this article on ProHockeyRumors.com. Senators and the Canucks could be teams to watch on the trade market. The article takes Friedman's comments and puts it down in the written format, which is good for me because I can screenshot it, put it on the screen. It's easier for all of us to pay attention and follow along. But if you wanted to get some insight as to what the Ottawa situation is, I mean, it talks about Shane Pinto, and that's kind of a video we already made a few days ago as well. But regarding the Vancouver Canucks, Elliotte Friedman goes out there and says this: Vancouver's potential activity on the trade market spurs from the health of Tanner Pearson, who fortunately projects to be healthy for the 23-24 campaign after a persistent and controversially handled hand injury nearly cost him his career last season. His availability creates both a roster and cap crunch for Vancouver, as his $3.25 million cap hit would suddenly factor into their day-to-day picture and not sit on LTIR as previously expected. Before we proceed, I just wanted to give my insight because literally I have a scoop. Okay, maybe not a scoop. I don't want to make myself seem like I'm a big insider or whatever, but from what I gathered watching Tanner Pearson in the Richmond Minoru practices the other day was that he actually is capable of playing. Now, to what extent and what magnitude, we'll see when the season begins. But the guy was moving, he was shooting, which is good to see because obviously his hand injury from last season is going to affect the way that he's able to move around with the puck on his stick and get shots off and all that. So it was good to see that just from the small sample we saw, he was good to go. But of course, practice and in-game scenarios are completely different. Tanner Pearson could be lacking a step or not really able to get the proper shots off when he's in a game. We'll just see during the preseason how he's able to tango there. And considering the fact that even last year he only had 5 points in the 14 games that he had, while the point per game number isn't the worst, I mean, it's a point every 3 games. You could get worse than that, of course. It's just been such a long time since he's played that we'll have to wait and see where everything aligns when the lineup is finalized. But if Pearson could get back to what he was last year, 34 points, 68 games played, literally half a point a game player, that's not that bad, honestly. Add to that his two-way game, his responsible defensive play, and play alongside the boards too, and you have yourselves a pretty complete player if he's actually able to compete for $3.25 million a year till the end of this upcoming season. Not saying it's guaranteed, but there is potential here. It just depends on how well Pearson is able to manage the pace of play around him considering the limited sample he's had the past little while. On the 32 Thoughts summary here, it says that Tanner Pearson would likely factor into a third-line role, potentially alongside Conor Garland and Pia Suter. Pearson's trade value will likely be minimal with other teams wary of his health, so shopping a depth player like Garland in his $4.95 million cap hit would likely return better value for GM Patrick Allvin. While some have criticized Garland's tenure in Vancouver, he's a winger who consistently puts up between 40 to 60 points, can play a top 6 role, and is cost-controlled through 2026 without trade protection. He's the type of player a few teams looking to fill gaps in their forward group would be interested in. Now this is where we get to the speculative part, because Garland is one of many names who has been tossed around there as potential Canucks trade bait. It's Boeser, it's Beauvillier, it's Garland, it's Pearson, it's whomever. We've made a bunch of videos about everybody. But for Conor Garland, he is a guy that I feel like, when it comes to the most expendable quote-unquote, he might just happen to be in that territory. He's a smaller player, but he's also very feisty, not to mention skilled and capable of producing points. He can make some really nice snipes once in a while, and has a knack for just getting under his opponent's skin. He was a lot more effective with the Canucks earlier in his tenure rather than towards the end. I mean, literally the last game of the year last season, he scored a hat-trick against his former team, but when it comes to Conor Garland, you could very well say he's quote-unquote fallen out of favor in terms of how he's used and in terms of the opportunities he gets. This POV has also blended into the fans' perception of Garland, because now you're seeing a lot more criticism of how he takes the puck and skates it into the corner, or takes a shot from a wide angle that doesn't go anywhere, or he turns the puck over by going into too many battles he can't win. He's not a perfect player by any means, but he's still useful and he's still capable of doing his job. And while 4-point-something, almost $5 million a year isn't nothing, it's still a pretty sizable amount of money, you could very well say that Garland is a top 6 capable winger that is worth that amount of payroll, especially when you consider the other things he is good at away from the goals and the assists. So if the Canucks, who are already kind of stacked up on wingers anyway, have an extra guy in Pearson who could play a valuable role in the second or third line, if this opened the door for a guy like Conor Garland to get traded, so you're rolling with a winger setup that sees Kuzmenko, Mikheyev, Beauvillier, Boeser, Pearson, Podkolzin, Höglander, and then another winger on the fourth line, then that opens the door to making a guy like Garland expendable. The article also says this here, that Garland seems to be the most likely candidate because the Canucks' realistic trade options are limited beyond him. They just signed Blueger in free agency. Players like Dakota Joshua have shown to be reliable bottom 6 presences and are cost-effective deals, and they would be selling low on younger players like Höglander or Podkolzin. The article then brings up the difficulties in trying to make trades with significant cap players as well, because at this time of the year, I mean, a lot of teams have their rosters set. So to find a trade partner that would be able to make this work is going to take not only a lot of maneuvering on the Canucks' part, but on the other receiving team's end as well. They're going to have to make sure that they're cap compliant and that Garland doesn't completely screw up their financials. The other guys we had talked about, Beauvillier, Boeser, they're all making similar to a little bit more on the dollar. Boeser's making 6.6, so that's definitely a beefy contract too. But if you wanted to talk about this Garland thing, I mean, the article goes out there and says that of teams with cap space to spare, the Blackhawks jump out as the lone destination where acquiring a veteran would not cost a spot for a younger player needing significant NHL ice time. They still could use a few more bodies to fill out their opening night roster. So, yeah, I mean, Garland to the Blackhawks, is that really an idea? I mean, I didn't want to make this video entirely that, but that is food for thought right there. I mean, if the Hawks are willing to trade away some nice prospects and maybe a draft pick or two, I think about it, of course. Especially since the Hawks have quite a few prospects that are of note in their system, considering how badly they've performed in the standings the past few years. But either way, talk to me in the comments all your thoughts about this Elliotte Friedman idea, this update here that says that Conor Garland may be one of the more likely names to get traded. Of course, the hot seat article on the Hockey News we had talked about the other day suggested Boeser and Beauvillier being options, but didn't mention too much about Garland. Friedman, however, is saying that because Pearson is coming back in here, because there is an extra spot being taken up and some extra money that's not LTIR'd, then Garland may be the next one out. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about this entire idea? If you're a Canucks fan, who do you think they should trade more instead of the others? Garland, Boeser, Beauvillier, or do you try to get somebody else like Pearson off your books? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.